Hi, it's me Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe my channel and visit my Patreon page, link in the description. At school the next day, Jennifer came up behind me and squeezed my tush while whispering, "Hi, Michelle." "Jennifer, don't call me that," I whispered back. "Someone might hear." She put her arm on my shoulders. "Don't worry, babe." I looked around before I said it. There wasn't anyone close. "You're a lot shorter today." "I'm not wearing 5-inch heels today." "That's true. I like you this way." "I thought you liked me the other way." "I do. I like you both ways." "I'll see you later, sweet cheeks." I had just begun to prepare supper on Wednesday when a knock at the kitchen door made me freeze. Looking towards the door, I saw that it was only Jennifer again, so my heart dropped back into my chest and I went to open the door. "Hi, Michelle," she said as she pushed past me and walked to my bedroom carrying 2 shopping bags. Jennifer immediately dumped the contents of the bags on my bed and began sorting through the stuff she had brought. "What's this?" "I had a bunch of stuff I thought you could use," she said as she began placing things on my dresser. While I looked on, my dresser took on a decidedly feminine appearance. A crocheted tissue box holder and several small stuffed animals, plus a couple of ceramic ballerinas and a ceramic matador were carefully arranged by Jennifer. "What do you think?" she asked when she was done. It's very nice and very generous, Jennifer, but I can't accept your gifts. If someone was to come into my room, they might get the wrong idea. And what would they think if they opened your closet and saw all your clothes, shoes, and pocketbooks? Or if they opened your drawers and saw all your other pretty things? How many people besides me have been in here in the past few years? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. It was very considerate of you to think of me. I can't seem to think of anyone else since school started. Now go work on dinner and leave me alone to work. I want it to be a surprise. I walked back to the kitchen and continued the food preparations. I figured that Jennifer couldn't cause too much mischief by dinner time. Once the food was cooking, I returned to my room. I found that I now had several posters of boy bands in almost erotic poses on my walls, and Jennifer was hanging new curtains on one of my windows. "Oh, you ruined the surprise," she said. "I didn't want you to see it until it was done." "I'm surprised," I said honestly, looking at the posters. "Aren't they hot?" Jennifer asked. "Shelley Petropoulos gave them to me. Her uncle works at a record company." "Yeah, hot," I said. "Who are they?" "I don't recognize anybody. Shelley says that there are 3 new bands that are cutting records this month. We'll be hearing their names a lot in the future." "What do you think of the curtains?" I looked at the new curtains that now graced my windows. Stripes of red and hot pink undulated gently from side to side from the ceiling to the floor. "Cool," I said. "They're bright." I just loved them when I saw them. I knew they were exactly what this room needed to bring it to life. "They certainly do that," I said. Looking around, I saw that my nightstand now wore a tablecloth and the light shade was draped with a light pink scarf. When you turn on the light, it bathes the room in pink. You can remove it if you want to read. I nodded and continued to look around. My dresser top was wearing a light lime-colored chenille cover, and my small desk had been turned into a makeup table. I'd kept all my cosmetics hidden in one of the drawers until now. There was no denying now that this was a girl's bedroom. I helped Jennifer put up the other curtain set, sat down on my bed, and said, "I don't know what to say," which was very true. I added, "Thank you, Jennifer." "You're welcome, Michelle." I couldn't stand to see you sleeping in this room the way it was before, all stark and colorless. It had no identity. Now it makes a statement. "It does that, all right," I said, realizing that the room until now had been an accurate reflection of me. Like the room, I had no identity. I was jumping back and forth between 2 worlds without much more than a toehold in either. "I love you in that miniskirt," she said. "You have such great legs." "My knees are ugly, but yours are beautiful." "I'm so jealous." I didn't bother looking down because she was wearing jeans, but I had to say something. "I always thought you had great legs." "Your knees aren't ugly." Jennifer had walked towards me as we talked and was now standing just a few inches away. She reached out and I offered my hands so she could pull me up from the bed. Once I was up, she pulled me gently to her. With my 5-inch heels, she was only a couple of inches taller than I was, and she wrapped her arms around me and lowered her face to mine. I knew what was expected and put my arms on her shoulders as we kissed. I licked at her tongue lightly as it invaded my mouth. After a long kiss, we separated. She said breathlessly, "Are you sure you're not a woman? You sure kiss like a woman." "Have you kissed many women?" I asked, shocked. "Not many, but I've experimented by kissing a couple since Madonna started doing it on stage. Women are always much more gentle than guys, like you are. When I hold you and kiss you, I feel like I'm kissing a woman. Right now I am a woman. But when I kissed you at school on the first day back, while you were dressed as a male, it also seemed like I was kissing a woman. That's how I knew for sure that I was right about you being Ashley James, and it's also when I first got the idea for us switching roles when we go to the Halloween party. By the way, my mom is going to make the alterations, so she'd like you to come over on Saturday. But Jennifer, I can't go to the Halloween party as your bride. I know that Michelle is okay with you, but I also know that it wouldn't be with a lot of others." "Wait a minute. Did you say that your mother is going to do the alterations? Did you tell her that I was going to wear it?" "Of course." She thought that it was a great idea. She loved the way that we looked last year as Sunny and Cher. I groaned. "But you promised that you wouldn't tell anyone." "I didn't tell Mom about Michelle. I only told her that Jimmy and I were going to switch genders for the party. She's going to speak to a friend about getting a rental tux that will hide my shape and make me look more like a boy. It shouldn't be that hard, since I'm not as well endowed as you." "Have you told anyone else? About Michelle?" "No." "Good. Please don't. Don't worry. I want it to be a complete surprise at the dance." "Jennifer," I whined, "I can't. Look it from my side. The day after the dance, guys will be calling me fag and queer in the school corridors. I promise you that won't happen." "How can you promise?" "Because if they do, I'll make sure that they never get another date with a girl while they're in high school. They'll have to take their sister or mothers to the graduation prom." I looked at her skeptically. "I will," she said assertively. I knew that I wasn't going to dissuade her. She had decided that we were going as newlyweds, and that was that. I knew that if I refused, she might spread my secret out of anger. She might as well have stuck a fork in me because I was cooked. "My mom's expecting you on Saturday. I'll come over early and walk with you so you won't feel nervous." "You want me to go to your house as Michelle?" "Of course, silly. She can't very well fit you as Jimmy. The gown will never fit on Halloween." I knew that I couldn't refuse, so I agreed. "Okay. Do you want to stay for dinner? I'm making eggplant parmesan." I'd love to." I was already up and dressed by the time that Jennifer got to my house on Saturday. I guess she suspected that I would find some excuse not to come if she didn't come get me, and I might have because I was nervous about walking 2 blocks in my home neighborhood dressed as Michelle. Mom only said, "Bye, dear," as we left to walk the 2 blocks. I didn't want to ask for a ride, but I wouldn't have refused one if she'd offered. As we walked, Jennifer put her arm around my waist. She could sense my nervousness. "Were you this nervous about walking a couple of blocks when you were in Illinois?" "No, of course not. But out there I wasn't maintaining dual identities. People only knew me as Ashley. In this neighborhood, people only know me as Jimmy." We reached Jennifer's house without incident, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Of course I still had to make the trip back. Her mom was in the basement when we arrived, but she came upstairs when she heard us come in. "Hi, girls," Mrs. Crowley said to us. "Hi, Mrs. Crowley," I said while Jennifer said, "Hi, Mom." "Where's Jimmy?" she asked. "This is Michelle," Jennifer said. "Hi, Michelle. But where's Jimmy? I thought that you want to get him." "Yes, Mom," Jennifer said. "This is Michelle." Mrs. Crowley finally got it, without the proverbial house having to fall on her. She looked at me for several seconds with her mouth slightly agape, and then began to approach me slowly as she continued to stare intently. When she reached me, she looked me up and down very slowly, as if I was a piece of artwork that she was considering for purchase. Putting her hands on my waist, she said, "Turn around slowly. Michelle," she said. I turned for her, at the speed she indicated by the pressure of her hands, while she scrutinized me from head to foot. When I was facing her again, she ran her hands lightly up and down my arms, examined my hands, and then touched my hair before closely examining my face. I can't believe it! I thought this was supposed to be a drag gag. But you look too perfect, Michelle. It'll never come off as a simple Halloween prank. That's what I've been trying to tell Jennifer. You have a beautiful figure, Michelle, Mrs. Crowley said. It's nothing at all like a boy's. Your narrow shoulders, high, tiny waist, and weighty posterior practically shouts, woman. Your legs are shapely instead of muscular, your skin is soft, and your face is delicate. You're really Jimmy. Mom, Jennifer said sharply. Her name is Michelle today. Mrs. Crowley looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm just so blown away. You aren't at all what I was expecting. Your makeup is perfect, but Jennifer wasn't gone long enough to have helped you. Did your mother help you get ready today? No, I said nervously. Mrs. Crowley nodded. How many other people know your secret? I hadn't expected this. Maybe I should go, I said. Mom, what's with the 20 questions? You're making Michelle nervous and you're embarrassing me. I'm sorry, dear. I'm sorry, Michelle. There's a valid reason for my questioning you. I have to know if I'm to help you properly with this project. I looked at her for a couple of seconds. She didn't seem to be prying simply for the sake of curiosity, so I said, only Jennifer and my family know about my cross-dressing. I never did it before this past summer. It started as the result of a lost wager. But now you like it, she said matter-of-factly. In fact, you feel much more comfortable dressed as a woman than as a man, and you do it as often as you can. I nodded and hung my head slightly. There's no need to be embarrassed, Michelle. As part of my business, I've helped many males with their female wardrobes. Men's bodies are different than ours, and women's clothing usually has to be specially tailored to look good on a male frame. That's not true for you, however. I don't know what God intended for you, Michelle, but it wasn't to be a male, not with that body and gorgeous face. Come downstairs, girls. I hesitated, but Jennifer pulled my arm until I followed. I hadn't expected Mrs. Crowley to quiz me about my being Michelle, and I was feeling a little embarrassed, despite her statement about helping men with female clothing. As we descended the stairs to the basement, it was my turn to be amazed. I had never been down there before as it was off-limits when Jennifer was growing up. Mrs. Crowley operated a small alterations shop in the basement, and it even had its own entrance on the side of the house. The area of the basement that I could see had racks of clothing, most in plastic bags like you see at a dry cleaner's. Remove your skirt and blouse, Michelle, Mrs. Crowley said as she disappeared through a door. Mom, my gown is already out here, Jennifer said. I know. I'll just be a second. That's her storeroom, Jennifer said by way of explanation. I had finished undressing by the time Mrs. Crowley returned, carrying 2 garment bags that she hung on a bracket extending out from the wall. She immediately opened one and removed a taffeta and organza ruffled petticoat before turning to face me. The fact that you're wearing a corset will make this easier, she said. Raise your arms, dear. Dropping the petticoat over me and tying the drawstring waist, she fluffed up the multi-shirred ruffle that the gown would rest on, giving it the very full appearance. Watching her mother, Jennifer said, Mom, the gown won't fit over that petticoat. The skirt isn't large enough. That's designed for a full ball gown. I know, dear, she said. Opening the other garment bag, she withdrew a beautiful wedding gown. But it will fit under this. Jennifer walked over to get a closer look at the gown, a beautiful creation with a white satin bodice and pink accented beaded lace. The fitted bodice ended several inches below the waist over an organza skirt. This looks like Adele's gown. She told me she got rid of it. It was, her mother said. When we were cleaning out her apartment after she separated from that Claude Mooney, she told me to throw it in the dumpster behind the building. But I couldn't throw something so beautiful away that had only been worn once, so I sneaked it into my car and brought it home. I knew that I'd find a use for it someday. Jennifer turned to me. My sister separated from her bonehead husband after only 3 weeks of marriage. She's divorced now. I tried to tell her not to marry that big jerk, but she wouldn't listen, Mrs. Crowley said to me. Turning away, she said, I have some pictures here somewhere of Adele in the gown. She disappeared into the back room again, emerging with a small wedding album of the type usually given to the parents. Here it is. I have to hide it or Adele would destroy it. I trashed all the pictures of Mooney, but she doesn't want anything else around to remind her of the wedding. Here's a picture of Adele standing in the vestibule of the church. She held up a picture of a beautiful brunette in a wedding dress. I looked at the picture of Adele. She looked as happy as any bride should be on her wedding day. Adele is beautiful. Her resemblance to Jennifer is striking. And the gown is gorgeous. I can understand why you didn't throw it away. Jennifer does look very much like Adele, except she sprouted up until she towered 5 inches over her older sister, Mrs. Crowley said. I knew that she'd never be able to wear this dress, but I'm happy that someone will get some use from it. You're a lot closer to Adele's size, with maybe a slightly larger bust, but that's not a problem. I had to alter it for her and I didn't cut the excess material, so it can be let out. But what about the other gown? Jennifer asked. That was fine when I thought this was supposed to look like an obvious gag, but not once I'd seen Michelle. Her costume must be perfect, so she can honestly tell everyone that her appearance is the result of work by experts, or she could be the subject of ridicule after the event is over. There's no question that Michelle would fool everyone at the dance without my help, but with a genuine wedding gown, expertly fitted, she'll have a plausible excuse to offer once she unmasks, if she wishes to keep her Michelle identity a secret. I do, I said. I spent the rest of the morning playing dress mannequin while Mrs. Crowley fitted the dress, and by noon she had let out the bodice and re-sewn it. We took a short break for lunch and then returned to the basement where she had me stand on a raised platform as she prepared to adjust the length. But after her examination she announced that it was perfect right where it was. I stepped down, thinking I was done, but Mrs. Crowley started looking at the bodice again. She wasn't satisfied with the fit, so she made a few more marks and had me take it off so she could alter it. It was almost 4 o'clock before she announced that it was perfect. You look so lovely, she said, that it's a shame you aren't really getting married. When you do find a husband, make sure he isn't a knucklehead like my former son-in-law. A handsome face, muscular body, and overactive libido doesn't make a man a good mate. Mom, Jennifer said. Mrs. Crowley looked at Jennifer and realized her mistake. I'm sorry, Michelle. I forgot myself while I was working because there's nothing about you to remind someone you weren't born a girl. Looking at my face closely, she said, Do you shave? Only my legs and underarms. I don't have a beard, if that's what you mean. She nodded slowly. We're all done here, ladies. You can get dressed now, Michelle. With her help, I removed the gown and petticoat. As she and Jennifer placed it into the garment bag, I put on my miniskirt and blouse. Would you like to stay for dinner, Michelle? Mrs. Crowley asked. Thank you, Mrs. Crowley, but I don't want to impose. Don't be silly. It's no imposition at all. Better call your mother, though, and tell her you're eating here. Better yet, invite her to dine with us also. Mom did come for dinner, and we enjoyed a delicious meal of stir-fried vegetables and rice. Mom helped Mrs. Crowley prepare the food while Jennifer and I sat at the kitchen table and talked. After dinner, Jennifer and I cleared the table and loaded up the dishwasher before leaving our mothers to talk. We went to Jennifer's room and listened to her new MP3 player. She had already recorded a few dozen hours of music. Your mother looks so young next to mine, Jennifer said. She's only 32, I said. When we were talking about moving away, she joked about telling people she was my sister. You're not going to move, are you? Only if we have to. There have been a lot of cases where people who were a little different were beaten up and even killed by good, moral people who objected to their differences. Good, moral people who beat up and kill other people? I was being facetious. Actually, they're just homophobes and psychotics hiding behind the pretense of religion. Are you homosexual? No. At least I don't think so. I like girls. Does that make me a lesbian when I'm Michelle? Jennifer giggled. Not as long as you keep switching back and forth. How about if I stopped switching? Jennifer stopped smiling and looked at me intently. And stayed as a boy or as a girl? A girl. Then I guess you'd be a lesbian, she said softly as she moved closer to where I was sitting on her bed, and a very pretty one. And how do you feel about lesbians? There's one I'm quite fond of, she said as she pushed me down onto the bed. Anyone I know? I asked quietly. Yes, she said, as she lowered herself over me. Someone very close. Jennifer pressed her mouth to mine, and I felt her hands roaming over my body as we kissed. I was unsure what to do with my hands, but I didn't stop her from exploring as I had George. Finally, I started to massage her breasts. Her breathing got quicker and heavier, and her kissing grew more forceful until, suddenly she stopped. No, she said, pulling away. Not here. We can't do this here. Kissing? Not kissing. I'm talking about more than kissing, but we shouldn't even be kissing because it leads to other things. She pushed herself up and walked to her makeup table. Better fix your face, she said. I retrieved my purse and repaired my makeup while Jennifer fixed hers. Not that I was wearing very much, and what lipstick I'd had on earlier had mostly disappeared during dinner. I applied a fresh coat. After completing our repairs, we returned to just relaxing and listening to music until Jennifer's mother came in to say that my mother was leaving. I picked up my purse and we followed her back to the front door where Mrs. Crowley handed me the garment bag, saying, "Don't forget your dress, dear." Thank you, Mrs. Crowley. I'll get it back to you as soon as Halloween is over. Why don't you keep it, Michelle? She said sweetly. I've been hiding it in my storeroom, but I've been so afraid that Adele would find it on one of her visits and cut it into little pieces. It's much too nice a gown to be destroyed like that, but she's still extremely bitter towards her ex. They had only been married for 3 weeks when she came home and found the SB in their bed with some bimbo he'd picked up in a bar. Oh, Lord, my mother said, in her own house? At least my ex didn't start cheating on me for 9 years, that I know of, and then he had the sense to keep it away from the house. My ex only waited 7 years, Mrs. Crowley said, and I threw the bum out the day I learned about it. The stupid jerk even admitted it to me when I confronted him, and then acted like I had to take it and like it because I needed him. I showed him how much I needed him. I parted his hair with a table lamp. Men. After venting her anger, Mrs. Crowley calmed down and we said our goodbyes. I thanked Mrs. Crowley one more time before I left. I began seeing a lot more of Jennifer after that day. She would usually come over to my house during the week and I would go to hers on weekends. I knew that Mrs. Crowley had wormed my secret from Mom on the day that I had been fitted for the wedding gown. Mom hadn't been able to talk with anyone about my situation, and Mrs. Crowley, with her knowledge of male crossdressers gained from her contact with customers, seemed like the perfect source of information. Mrs. Crowley was always wonderful towards me, and I never came home without another new dress or skirt, sometimes two. Mrs. Crowley said that they were old things of Adele or Jennifer that she had altered to fit me, but a lot of them didn't seem to have ever been worn. Whenever I visited, I wore something she had given me so she could see that it was getting used. Jennifer always wore jeans or slacks, and Mrs. Crowley complained a number of times, both in front of Jennifer and when she wasn't in the room, that getting her into a skirt or dress was an almost impossible chore. Mom was almost as excited about the Halloween dance as Jennifer, and over the next month, after I got the gown, she picked up a number of accessories for me. She bought me a pair of white, satin, opera-length gloves, white stockings, a blue garter, and a veil. Mrs. Crowley made the mask that I would wear. It was shaped like those cheap, plastic, dime store masks that cover half your face, from your upper lip to your forehead, leaving an inverted V cut out for your nose. But instead of being made from plastic, it was made from several layers of stitched fabric, covered with white satin to match the gown. Additionally, rhinestones had been glued along the entire perimeter. It was exquisite and must have taken her a lot of time to make. She had also made a white satin stole for me since it was the end of October and the days were getting chilly. I continued to change into Michelle every day when I arrived home, but by October I began to wonder if that was such a good idea. The skin on my chest had continued to stretch from wearing the heavy faux breasts, and although I had begun wearing a tight t-shirt under a loose t-shirt to hide what seemed like small breasts from the other kids at school, even that wasn't enough anymore to completely hide my changing shape. Luckily, it was getting colder, so wearing sweaters and bulky clothing was appropriate, but I wondered what I was going to do come springtime. George had been sending me emails since first arriving at school, and I always responded the same day, but as the days grew into weeks, the frequency of his emails began to drop. I knew that he was busy with school and studying, but I suspected that time spent with new friends was playing a part. And it would be natural if not all the new friends were male. Halloween would arrive on a Sunday this year, so the dance was to be held on the Thursday night before so the students could wear their costumes on the following day, and I hurried home after school and immediately began getting ready. My preparation would probably take every minute until Jennifer arrived, so I didn't waste any time. I bathed, shaved my legs and pits, and set my hair before beginning to work on my face. I plucked a few stray hairs from eyebrows, which had never grown out, following my barbecue accident, and examined every millimeter of my face before moving onto my neck and shoulders. When my examination was complete, I began to dress, stopping before I put on the ruffled petticoat to work on my hair. When my hair was perfect, I worked on my face, keeping the look subdued, clean, and fresh. Mom arrived home while I was finishing up my face and came into my bedroom. "I've gotten used to coming home to awaiting dinner," she said as she bent down and kissed my cheek. "You've spoiled me." "I'm sorry, Mom. I just have too much to do before Jennifer gets here." "I'm not complaining, dear. I can prepare something for myself. Do you feel like eating?" "No, my stomach is tied up in nervous knots. I'm scared about going to this dance. I can't imagine what the kids will be saying at school tomorrow, to me and about me. Just keep telling everyone that it was a gag, a costume for the dance." "Yeah, I hope they'll believe that. I have a feeling that nothing is ever going to be the same again." Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.